time you build it, you'll just get a bunch of red text that on like a disconnected Zoom session.
Especially with the live stream of the.
Okay. I'm gonna dim the screen there because it gets bright. So thanks for coming, and people on the internet who are watching, please contribute questions to the chat room, and then we have a mic runner, a virtual mic runner who will pitch those questions back into us, so you can interact with the guests live. So
you want to introduce everybody?
Yes. I'm Hal. We have a couple people. Welcome, room. Welcome. Have a seat. We're just now getting started. Like literally, like right now. Is that Sarah? So, room full of friends. Thank you. I'm Hal Rotenberg, PowerShell MVP for a little while, and well, I didn't make this show. This is Jonathan's show originally. So, Jonathan.
I'm Jonathan Walls, PowerShell MVP, senior system engineer at the Home Depot. We do a lot of cool stuff with PowerShell at Home Depot. So, that's me.
Yo-yo extraordinaire.
Yes.
Yes, he's really good with the
I brought my yo-yo.
Did you?
Yeah,
We'll have to do that later. We'll have to spin that up. I'm a developer evangelist at Splunk. Prior to that, systems engineering, administration, architect, that kind of stuff. So PowerShell has really been a big part of my career for a long time. So really happy to introduce the guests that we have found at very short notice, and it worked out excellent. Let's start with Tobias Weltner. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Tobias. I'm MVP too.
In the mic.
Yep, I have the privilege of working with PowerShell full-time. That's great. And I created ISE Steroids, which is an extension to the ISE editor, and also have a lot of fun organizing conferences about PowerShell, and I'd like to talk about the upcoming EU conference as well.
So the format of this, and we'll get to Jeffrey and Adam in just a second, but I want to say that we've got 3 folks on the panel. We can shift back and forth, but I'm going to give Tobias and Adam some time to talk about some projects that I'm excited about, and I hope that you'll be excited about as well. And then Jeffrey is here, and we will have a Q&A, and we'll talk about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about. You know who Jeffrey Snover is. We'll introduce himself in a second, but I'm doing this out of water. I'm sorry. A lot of caffeine today. A lot of caffeine. Adam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Adam Driscoll. I'm a PowerShell MVP for like the past couple of years. I just started a new job as a consultant at Concurrency, and so some of my bigger projects have been PowerShell tools for Visual Studio, and I was pretty involved in the Power Grooving community for a long time. So that's me.
All right. In the middle, we have Jeffrey Snover. Who are you?
I'm the guy who's been mispronouncing Tobias's name for the last 15 years.
Tobias.
You said it right.
Wow.
Tobias. It's not Tobias.
It's Tobias.
Tobias.
Okay.
I've been mispronouncing it wrong. Mispronouncing it.
Me too. It's not just you. I can introduce you if you want me to.
Oh, no, so I'm Jeffrey Snover. I'm one of our newly minted technical fellows. And I'm the lead architect for the Enterprise Cloud Group. So that's Windows Server, System Center, Operations Management Suite, and the new Microsoft Azure Stack.
Take that, Rosinovich.
So if you like Server, if you like System Center, it's Jeffrey's fault. If you don't, it's Jeffrey's fault. It's Mark's fault. Awesome. Well, let's start. Like I said, we're going to talk about a couple of software projects that are cool, and we've been trying to get Tobias on the podcast, which is PowerScripting podcast. For those of you that don't know, I'm probably in a room of people that do know. But anyway, this is a live stream. But Tobias. So you have been involved in creating integrated scripting environments for PowerShell longer than the ISE existed. So you want to give us a little bit of a history lesson there on your involvement?
Oh, yeah.
Just take that thing out of there.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, much better.
Well, yeah, actually, I started with script. Well, first of all, to my biorhythm, it's now about 4 o'clock in the morning, so please excuse if I sort of...
We'll speak really loudly.
That's good. I've been in the scripting arena for a long time, so I met Jeffrey actually before there was even PowerShell.
That's right.
And exactly, WMIC, you know, he told me.
WMIC, yep.
And at that time, I was creating an editor system for VB Script, which was called System Scripter. And then, together with Carl Prosser, I was playing around with a couple of concepts when PowerShell came out. And the first thing was, I think, PowerShell IDE or something like that, which, well, didn't really work, but was fun. And then there was PowerShell Plus.
But this was the first. This was,
Yes.
no one else was doing this at the time.
That's
I
true.
think you guys were probably the first, right?
Yeah, that's true.
The PowerShell Plus was huge.
Yes, PowerShell, did anybody use PowerShell Plus in the room here?
Yeah.
Yeah, several.
Huge.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
at
was a
that
big
time.
fan.
And then basically this was always a tool because I really like to automate the scripting experience. And when ISE came out, I was really fascinated and amazed at how quickly this thing worked and the great access to AST. And basically in Berlin, when we had this session in Berlin, Jeffrey took us all to a secret room. That was before PowerShell 3 was out, and showed a couple of features to us MVPs. And at that time he said something like, we open up the AST and there's going to be great tool development. And at that time, no one really knew what that would mean. And today I know you can do a lot of amazing things with it. And so the ISE Steroids is basically building on top of the ISE editor, is a PowerShell module that you can load without installing anything else, and it simply opens up that AST magic to the script person. Okay, Hal, that's okay.
So what are some of your favorite features, or some of your customers' favorite features, the things that they like the most?
Well, there are a couple of things that are really making changes to the way how you used to write scripts. For example, there's an automatic refactoring. So if you get a script from someone and you can't read it because that person didn't stick to any best practice, then you simply hit a button. It'll refactor the whole script and replace aliases by commander names and add best practice rules and stuff like that. But there's lots more. In fact, people ask for features and then I sort of think about it and I did that. Where is that? And so then I look at it and it's already in there. There's so much stuff I really need to better organize it a little bit.
And then it's
one of my favorite features is the drop-down boxes with all the definitions of the functions, so you go directly to that. I just love that because I have a module, I got a ton of things in there, and just the combo box that says, "Oh, you go here." I love that thing.
Thank you. Yeah, while you mentioned that, one of the great features that we just added was this support for the PS Script Analyzer.
Yeah.
So while you type your code, you can use the PS Script Analyzer from Microsoft, and it'll just put in green squiggle lines if you violated best practices or have variables that are not initialized or stuff like that. So I really think there's so much great things in PowerShell, and ISE Steroids is simply trying to combine it and make it more visible to you.
Now, does it actually use the ISE?
Yes.
It's an extension of the ISE?
It is an extension. It's building on top of the ISE. So the ISE is basically doing the editing part, and it is simply adding more things to it.
And it's a module, so you just load it. It's awesome.
Yeah, you don't.
I never dealt with the install experience, but I've seen screenshots and stuff.
Yeah, it is basically that's one thing that some people report. They are not allowed to install software with their customers, and so they can still use it because it's simply a module. It's copy and paste border.
Now, did the capability that you're allowed, that you're able to add in ISE Steroids, did that grow as the ISE extension model grew? Version.
Well,
like what version of ISE can you practically do something with?
Yes. Well, you need PowerShell 3, the ISE in PowerShell 3. I think that was really PowerShell ISE for the ISE in PowerShell 2 was a different software.
Yeah.
It simply changed in PowerShell 3, but from there on, you can use any version.
And it's in the gallery, right? You can just
Yes.
install.
Yeah, I love the gallery.
So who can introduce PowerShell Gallery? Jeffrey, do you want to kind of talk about what people are doing with PowerShell Gallery?
Well, currently, you can use it in PowerShell 5,
Okay.
but I think they're all plans, right?
No, we So we
What is PowerShell Gallery?
PowerShell Gallery. So after I finally decided I was wrong. For years and years and years, I had said, Microsoft is not going to support the community sharing because I was convinced if we did, we'd screw it up, that we wouldn't stick with it, and that if we did stick with it, then we'd screw it up because some vice president would say, "Oh, look, people are using it. Let's make them use passport live ID, blah, blah, blah. Or let's make them, let's put ads in it. Anyway, so I was just convinced if we tried to do that role, we would screw it up. And basically through, kind of a change in leadership and a change in the culture in Microsoft, I concluded that we were in a good position to do this. We wouldn't screw it up. And so what we did was we now have the PowerShell Gallery. And the PowerShell Gallery is the community place where people can go and publish their modules and find modules and version the modules. And
Now, how is this different from the TechNet Script Gallery or Script Center, which has existed for quite a while?
Yeah, so first is we use PowerShell Package Management, previously known as OneGet. And PowerShell Package Management is a much less good name, but it goes to prove don't ask a lawyer about naming, especially when I tell you not to do that. So they didn't follow my instructions, and so we have the new name, PowerShell Package Management. And what it is it's not a package manager. It's a package manager. Mm-hmm. And so how does that work? And the answer is, well, a package manager is something that uses a protocol to talk to a repository that then is able to get things out of that repository, and when it gets it, it processes it in a way for usage. So then from there, there's a uniform experience to multiple package managers. So one package manager is developers, about NuGet. NuGet puts developer artifacts, runtimes, Java, Node.js, libraries like that, into a developer repository that you get, and then you put it in a directory somewhere and you can use. Chocolatey is a IT Pro repository, and what they do is they use the NuGet protocol, they use a NuGet repository, they stand up their own instance, and then they use a convention which says, when I pull the NuGet down, I open it up and I look to see if there's an install script, and if so, I run it. And that's very popular, scares the heck out of me. Random code from the internet and install it.
But they have validated packages now.
Oh, do
and,
they?
Security is a big goal of his to create something that's trusted.
Excellent. And then we stood up our own, which is the PowerShell Gallery. The PowerShell Gallery, again, uses NuGet. You don't have to use NuGet, but lots of people are, because it's pretty good. And we have our own NuGet repository, and in it, we put modules, and when you pull the modules down, then you put them in the proper path.
Yeah,
And then
where Chocolatey is for the installation of arbitrary software packages, PowerShell Gallery is for modules.
Correct.
Okay.
Currently modules, future more things, all things IT Pro and such.
Okay.
And then the point is that then you can set up your own galleries. You can say, I trust these things, I don't trust those things. I'd like to set up my own gallery. I'll vet a bunch of stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff. I'll pull it into mine, and then I'll tell people, yeah, don't use theirs, use mine.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can have an internal gallery and external. You can have multiple and kind of pull from them.
Exactly. We were just talking before the show that eventually we want to be able to say that the rules that the script editor rules or script analyzer rules, you want to make that an easy thing. Mm-hmm. So right now, when you go up to the repository, you don't just say, "Show me everything you have." You can do that, or you can say, "Show me these modules," or "Show me these DSE resources," and then you can pull down a DSE resource and it pulls down the module that has that. So ultimately, you want to be, more refined in what it is you're looking for.
And I guess you could install like a certain version. So if there was a new version of the SQL Server or DSC provider or whatever, you can say, no, I've tested, version 3.1.2. I want to install that one from the repository.
Exactly.
What about down-level availability?
Oh, sorry, that was all the setup. So then this was developed as part of PowerShell version 5, but there were a core set of technologies that we thought, boy, this stuff's so important. We've got to bring this down level. And so one of those is PowerShell Package Manager. And so now that is available today, and you can download it on PowerShell version 3 or PowerShell version 4. You don't have to upgrade the latest version of PowerShell to get that, so that's great. In a completely separate thread, we took a bunch of the security work and some DSC enhancements, and we upgraded PowerShell version 4 with that. So there's PowerShell version 4.1 with that. That's a great release. If you're on PowerShell version 4, you definitely want to get 4.1. There's a great thing 2 weeks ago about Mandiant. Mandiant, they're one of the teams you call when you're in trouble with the bad guys, like the bad guys are in and you don't know how to get them out. And they talked about
If he were, we wouldn't see him.
That's right.
So they talked about how they had just cracked like the hardest case ever they had. That you typically takes them a few weeks to snuff out the bad guy, you find them and get rid of them. And this took over 8 months. 8 months. And they said this was the toughest, most persistent, squirreliest attacker that they had ever had. And it took them over 8 months. The break in the case came when they installed PowerShell version 4.1. And the enhanced editing, or the enhanced logging that PowerShell version 4.1 in smoked out the bad guys. They were able to see exactly what they were doing and then root them out. So that's a bunch of, if you've read, Lee Holmes did a great blog, PowerShell Loves the Blue Team, and he's just led a ton of fantastic work in
Somebody dropped the URL into the chat if you've got the Crowdcast open, which, by the way, we have live chat and Q&A. So let me stop you there, Jeffrey, and say, do we have any questions from the chat room that are relevant? Mike Renner?
We do. Yes, we have one person asking if there's any incentive or other ways to encourage use. Folks, like right now you have graphs and downloads, but 381 modules, including DSC resources, and use more help. Trying to look for ways of parsing out what's
I'm not sure what the question is out of that. So let me walk over here. So
You want a mic?
yeah, I was thinking about that. I could use the microphone. Oh, don't make me read it. Oh, jeez. Which one? Okay. I wonder if there's any incentive or other way to encourage use. So are we just talking? I think the question is, how do we encourage the use of PowerShell Gallery? So I don't want to do this. Put this over there. So how do we encourage the use of PowerShell Gallery? It's a great tool. Are people using it? And what will bring more support to it?
Well, I would say before you can use the gallery, you need to know how to do modules, and right now at least.
Okay.
I think
Step one, make a module.
yes, exactly. That should be much easier than it is today, and that's again one of the features in ISE Steroids, but also other editors.
Okay.
That you can simply take a function, or even take code and turn it into a function, and then turn that into a module within just a snap or by pressing a button. I think it is really important to learn and to use modules, because that's basic of code reuse. That's so wonderful about PowerShell. When you wrap something into a module and you stick your module on your machine, then PowerShell keeps suggesting those command names that you invented and that you stored in that module all the time. So you automatically reuse your code. And I think that is one thing. And the other thing is, from my perspective, the ability to have your own module repository or own gallery repository in your own environment. I'm not really sure. Does that mean as a company I can have my own private PowerShell Gallery repository to submit or to distribute my internal modules?
Yeah.
And one thing I never really looked into is what are the requirements on that server side? Is this just a file server type of structure?
There's in the package manager module, it supports a few different types of repositories, and I think a file share is one. Just a standard file share, or a path on disk, or a NuGet server. And there's third-party software to stand up a NuGet server, which is basically a web server that has some a particular API in it.
Yeah, the file server is really easy to simple to set up, but then it doesn't support all the features like tags and being able to search on tags, whereas the NuGet repository does. And the NuGet repository, that was a bit chewy to set up for a while, and at some point somebody was looking at building a desired state configuration resource to make it just simple to just make it so. But the other thing is, it depends on what the question was. First off, there's a bunch of great stuff in there, and the more great stuff there is, the more people will use it. But I think a lot of people have the question like, oh, can I use community software? Can I contribute to community software? And really, yes, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Go talk to the people, and the Unix guys in your company. If you got a mixed shop, the Unix guys have been doing this for the last 3 decades. Go talk to them. They've already talked to the lawyers. Ask them which lawyer that you should talk to. They'll send you to the right guy, and then they'll say, yep, here's what you do, here's what to be aware of, and
they've been using apt-get and yum and RPM install for a long time, a long time.
And I mean, as a developer, like once you start using something like NuGet or the package management stuff, you realize that's just the easiest way to go. That NuGet changed my life when
A little closer to the mic.
Changed my life when going into pulling down third-party libraries like that, because you have to go searching on the internet and try to download a zip and then unlock that zip and all that kind of stuff. You can just
scavenger hunt.
exactly. So then you always get the most recent version that's stable, available on the gallery. So it's pretty awesome.
So I want to change topics a little bit. Let's pivot back to Tobias, give a call to action to people about ISE Steroids, and then we'll go to your project.
Yeah, can I mention the PowerShell conference?
Oh, yeah. You have 20 seconds. Let's go.
Oh, wow. Okay. Today we announced that there is going to be the PowerShell Conference Europe, and it's taking place in Hanover. That's great because next year in Hanover is Leibniz year, and Jeffrey knows why that is important. Like monadology comes from there. And so April 20 to 22, we have 3 days of fun in Hanover. If you'd like to find out more, just go to psconf.eu. Yeah, that's it.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
So Adam, you're not here. You're here rather. Okay. Tomei, another PowerShell MVP, couldn't be here, but you two have been collaborating on a project, and I just thought it was really compelling. It's new. It's different. It's something that we've not really been playing with in PowerShell. So I want you to introduce the Flancy project, and then we'll kind of go from there.
All right,
Got a lot of questions.
Yeah, Flancy is a PowerShell module that allows you to build microservice web services, pretty much. And the naming is a funny story because
FLANCY.
it comes from Sinatra, which is a Ruby project that's a way of developing these web services. And then .NET took that concept and they created Nancy because Nancy is Frank Sinatra's daughter. And then Flancy is a combination of the Python micro framework that's similar called Flask and Nancy. So pretty much what we're doing is we're just...
By the way, I looked this up on Urban Dictionary. Flancy on the Urban Dictionary is better than fancy, but not as good as fabulous.
Well, that's a perfect description.
So, okay, but what is it?
Boots are made for walking.
We're going to now. Yeah, so, I mean, we've been collaborating on this for about a week now, so it's very new, but the big thing with Nancy is that it's extremely easy to get started. One of their, core, advertisements is that you can fit a service in a tweet. So the entire service fits in a tweet, and you have a live running web service. So that's kind of the concept we're going for in PowerShell. So it's similar kind of easy to read, easy to create web services to expose PowerShell commandlets or just functionality that you want outside of PowerShell. So
there's and Tomei has on his GitHub account, it's like TOENUFF /Flancy, and somebody drop that link in the crowdcast if you don't mind. There's a bit of a README, and there's a couple of examples to show you a little bit of what this is about, but you're basically spinning up a web server, and the contents of what is delivered to the web client are defined in a PowerShell script very, very simply. So you're basically saying, I want to listen on, well, you're not even saying what you want to listen on, but you're saying, respond to this particular URL. So like /home, for example. And if you, the example I just made up for Jonathan a minute ago was a case statement, right? So say, if I have a case statement and /home, the body of that, that function, deliver, the web content for the home page or whatever. Or /login would be a login page. And so each kind of section of that case statement would be the content. But I don't know if it's going to be useful so much about a web service. I mean, a website. It's really about services.
Right.
And so if you can kind of define the concept of a service or micro web framework for building services out and why this is useful, and we'll kind of think about what people on the panel here how they would use them.
Okay. Yeah. So some of the examples that we typically run into, especially in the dev world, is REST services are so prolific nowadays because they can be consumed by any type of client. So
like the invoke REST method.
Exactly. So a lot of the examples that are on the Flancy project use invoke REST method to talk to the Flancy service. So they pretty much just talk JSON back and forth, and you can pretty much think about calling get process in the service, serializing that to JSON, and consuming it from anywhere. So that's kind of one of the big benefits of developing something like this. So you can kind of think of this as a method of exposing your PowerShell functionality to things beyond Windows, sort of thing.
And you could have, for example, a URL route that would like get/process/ID number, and then the ID number would be part of that URL, and that would go do a get process on that ID or whatever.
Yeah, another great example of a microservice is imagine you're going to write some scripts that on all the various machines. It can run on any machine, and then it wants to target various machines in your network. So you could put that in Active Directory if you want, but imagine you want to do some richer stuff. What you could do is you could set up one of these machines with this FLANCY, and it keeps all the services, all the information about the computers, right? Inventory information, etc. And then everybody else can just go to that microservice for its targeting. Find me all the computers where blah 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 blah, and just update it one place instead of in the past. Well, either you had to put all that information in Active Directory. Oh, that's great, but what happens if you have to change the schema? Yeah, that's not going to happen. Or then you say, well, okay, well, I have that information. I'll put it in a CSV file. Oh, except I need it over there. Oh, well, I'll make a copy. Oh, we're going to need to update it. Oh, well, then I got multiple copies.
So it's really kind of breaking the service down into the core piece of delivering that business process, whatever.
Yeah.
I want to get a process. So it's really looking at a web service the same way that we're looking at command lines. Task-based.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, that's kind of like one of the core fundamental things around REST is the concept of everything's a resource, everything is very descriptive. So you're going to get process, you're going to get service, and then you just use standard HTTP methods to interact with it.
So let me have the microphone back, and I'm going to go to him exactly, and then we'll go to anyone else in the audience that has questions, and we'll kind of go back and forth. So what you got?
So first thing we have is the audio on the line is kind of quiet, so may hold the mic closer. May help.
Okay.
Because they're like using headphones and stuff and themselves going in. So if we get louder on the online thing. And then we have a question. They're wondering if we'll get any package management for Nano in the actual release or in the TP.
Okay. Package management for. So
Yeah.
I wish we had multiple microphones, obviously.
So yes, in the next version of Windows Server Technology Preview 4, which don't ask me dates because I don't do dates, but yes, you get PowerShell package management and you get some desired state configuration. So, hoo-ha, good stuff.
Awesome. All right, let me go back over to you with my microphone. Got any others? Okay. Anybody in the audience want to riff
We have
on?
the next one here.
What? We have more?
So on the package management, we have biggest discussion I always have with my coworkers, all Linux, when I say X doesn't exist natively in Windows, and they say just install it. That's what we do on Linux all the time. Oh, right, that's hard on Windows.
So
that's
it's really
a comment or question.
yeah.
So that's an in-your-face thing, guys.
So what about discoverability for the resources that are out there? in the gallery?
So what you can do is you can say, there's three concepts. First is this notion of package provider. That's what I mentioned. There's the protocol, a way to interact with the repository, and then when you pull something down, a handler to handle it. Then there's a source, and so there can be multiple providers. And in fact, as part of the, what?
Talk to the camera. Talk to the audience.
And so then,
I should have said this earlier.
well, where can you get the providers? And the answer is anywhere you want. And one of the answers is we come pre-configured to get stuff out of the PowerShell Gallery. And so you're going to see is you're going to be able to say find package provider. And so if the package provider is in the repository, you can find it. And so that works now. And so that's where you'll be able to find these package providers. Now, then once you have the package provider, then the question is, well, where does it go? What's the source of the packages? And there, I don't think there's a good answer. Twitter, friends, etc. Like Chocolatey and PowerShell Gallery, those are well-defined things. But if somebody wants to set up their own PowerShell Gallery, like your company, how are you going to find that? There'll be some means to do that. So you configure a provider to point at a source, and then when you say find package or find DSC resource or find package provider, it'll go to all of them looking for the component and we'll find it. Now if you want to say, well, no, I want to get it from this source or another source, you can specify that. You can say find package minus source Chocolatey or find package minus source get, and you narrow the focus there. But that's the model: provider, source, particular location, and then things in the repository.
And then, though, is that just going to find, like if you're doing a search, is it only going to search against the names of the modules, or does it search against some other metadata?
That'd probably be up to the provider, wouldn't it?
There you go. It's up to the provider, but we have some structure there, so we encourage the use of tags. And then when you go and publish something to the PowerShell Gallery, you can specify some additional tags, but we do some analysis of the code, and then we'll publish some tags. So we publish the name of the commandlets and things like that.
Great.
Question? Kurt? I'll come to you. Sort of. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, so it's just a comment based on the question earlier about how to encourage all of this package management modules and getting people to feed the system so that the system continues to grow. One thing that's worth pointing out is a lot of the modules that are on the gallery right now, if you go to the gallery through a web browser and you look at the modules, there's a link to a project page, and the project page often is in GitHub, so they're open source. There's a ton of open source content there. So just in terms of getting started, while there are tools for creating modules which are very helpful, if you're somebody who also likes learning by example, there are a ton of open source examples out that people can just go and grab and download and consume and modify and then push out their own versions of the next best thing.
Yeah. Good point.
That's a great point. So these modules are written by some of the best people and the most skilled people in PowerShell in the industry. So you get to go see their code and learn from them, and and you get better by looking at other people's code. You're like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So,
all right, let's go back to the chat room.
Okay, so first one, Active Directory, is that coming in TP4 as well? That's just what it says.
I think the question was Nano, I think.
for Nano Server. Nope.
That's a no. All right.
Yeah, so now the color on that. So basically, that's one of the two most actively, most frequently requested things are Active Directory for Nano Server and then SQL for Nano Server. Here's the thing with Active Directory, that's probably going to be a while. If you were to ask Satya, hey, what are the top 10 things that you're tracking? A very large number of them, the Active Directory team is on the critical path for. Things like, Office 365 and hybrid cloud and workplace join of devices, etc. Those guys are, they are oversubscribed to critical things. So at some point we will become one of the top 10 things there, but right now they are slammed.
Next thing is, what is the difference between NuGet and AppX?
Okay, so AppX is an install framework. Okay, so it's an XML framework. You got an XML document, and basically what you do is you say, hey, there's a handler, and that handler then maps, or some tag, which maps to a handler, and then the handler then grabs the rest of the XML document and makes it so. Okay, so in the context of AppX, that's a general purpose framework. Now, various scenarios will use AppX to do installation. The Windows Store uses AppX and a well-defined set of tags and handlers so that you can install kind of client-oriented applications in a way that makes it easy to make them isolated, to remove them and make it clean, all that stuff. Windows Server is going to use AppX to do its installation, and we call that WSI, Windows Server Installer. It is AppX, that framework, but we have some additional tags and some additional handlers, things like the ability to define an NT service, to register a WMI provider. You'll see a number of things like that. We'll flesh that out. Those are things that you don't want an app store to do, right? You don't want your fart app setting up an NT service, right? That's not good. So, but Windows Server you do. Now also containers. Okay. Yes, that's because you want the enterprise version of the fart app. Okay. So then, if you take a look at containers, the way we distribute containers is using AppX as well. So it's a general purpose installation technology.
Talk more about containers.
Is that in one get?
Tupperware, it's awesome. Burp it. Containers. What would you like to know about containers?
Are those in one get?
Are containers in OneGet? Ooh, I missed the thing. Its new name is Package Manager. Package Manager.
Prove it. I just went to a OneGet session this afternoon, so.
Gotta tell you.
Thanks, Joel.
Yeah.
Let's get one more in here too.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. You should be able to get. You should be able to get containers via PowerShell Package Manager. I don't think you can do that today, but certainly that makes sense too. I mean, let me be clear. Here's the model. The model is there's lots of stuff out there in the world. Lots of stuff out in the world. There's PowerShell. Love PowerShell. Got modules, scripts, bunch of great stuff. There's other stuff. There is, NuGet, provider stuff. Then there's Node.js. Oh, Node.js, I was working with Node.js this week. And there's some Node.js libraries. Like, where's that? And so there's all this distributed stuff all throughout the network. What we want to do is we want to provide you a uniform way to interact with that mess. A unified set of commandlets, a coherent conceptual model, and then the ability to find these things and interact with these things. So if there's something out there that you want to get from there to your box, we want PowerShell Package Management to be the way to do that. And then, step by step by step, we'll need to write providers to make that so. But that's the idea.
All right, we'll do that in a second. Let me get over here. We have a question from the audience. He doesn't talk as loud as Joel does, so we will bring the mic to him.
This is true!
Thanks. I actually just wanted to hear my voice through the microphone. That's all. Yeah, no, so it's a question of clarification. You're talking about Node.js and its package manager, and it brings to mind, like the PyPy and the CPAN and Pair. And yeah, so when you're talking about the package manager, is it going to be aware of like Node packages and how to install them for Node, or is it just going to know how to pull packages that should work only in PowerShell out of these other places?
No, that's the model. That's the whole point of having a package manager. Is again, the vision is if there's something out there and you want it. So specifically, we want Windows to be great platform to do Node.js development, or Python development, or Scala, or Erlang, or whatever. And they all have different ways of doing stuff. So we want to be able to say, just write a Node.js package manager, which is again what? It's a way to register a repository, use a protocol to find things in that repository, pull those things down, and then when they're down, process them so that they can be used. So obviously, what you do with the Node.js library is different than what you do in if you put Node.js library in a PowerShell module path, that's not going to do you any good. So therefore, you need a unique provider for that to put it in the right place, process it correctly.
So I think it's all about options. I mean, you're not going to bother to install a Node.js library unless you're doing Node development.
Yeah.
So where would it make sense to install this Node.js library through the Windows package manager? I mean, why not just use npm? I think it's called. I mean, if you already have a domain-specific method to install that thing, why use the PowerShell package manager?
Yeah,
Windows package manager.
If that works for you, go with God. But what we want to do is we want to provide a uniform way to access those things. In the same way that there used to be a specific API to talk to the services, which was different than how to talk to processes, etc. And then we provided WMI, a uniform way to be able to talk to those things. It's exactly the same thing. Okay. So the question is, are you going to have an npm, npm, whatever it is?
npm, I think it is.
That's
Node.
what I thought I said. Anyway, but will you have a desired state configuration resource, for that? And the answer is maybe, good, great, it's great, but we're definitely going to have one for the PowerShell package management. So anything that plugs into that, there'll be a whole set of things that just come for free.
Okay, gotcha. So I guess it could be a scenario where maybe the IT group is setting up systems for a developer here, install this set of things, with on the laptop before it's given to the developer, and then the developer could use npm if he wanted to, but he would have a set of things that maybe the IT guy installed before.
That's true. I will say that PowerShell Package Manager is a bit more. We will bring things down in a way that registers them. So you'll be able to say, show me what's on the system, and you'll have inventory. We support SWID tags. SWID tags is a strong identity. So if you want to do that, you can. But doing it through our model gives you a uniform space, uniform interaction model, and more. Again, identity, inventory, things like that.
Okay, cool. Do we have any other questions from the chat room? Yeah, let's go back over there.
So are we looking at adding containers to a repository? And in the future, can we deploy a container via package management?
So I think we sort of covered that one. Anything else you want to say there?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just say that,
yes, that would make sense.
Watch that space, yeah. Right, so there's GitHub, and that's where a bunch of these, or sorry, no, not GitHub, there's Docker Hub, a bunch of images will go there. We'll see.
Okay, cool.
We'll have a bunch of demos.
Any other questions in the audience I can run to? Sprint. Okay, no. Joel, are we good? So Joel, you like to talk about packaging a lot. I know that it's a bit of a passion of yours.
I was really disappointed. There were only 6 MVPs in the one get.
Well, it was in a different room in a different area.
Yeah, in a different room. I had to go across campus.
Why do you care about packaging so? Why do you care about packaging so much? What is the big deal with you? I know you've been working on a few different projects.
Yes, Joel. What's your problem?
I almost jumped out of my seat before when he asked about why do we want Node.js packages? Because the answer is, presuming that there was a Node.js provider for OneGet, okay? Yep. That means that now I can give you a meta package, let's say, that I would put anywhere on any of the providers, and it can take a dependency on packages from multiple providers. So now I can say, install Flask, and Flask can install Node.js, because all of these providers, you understand that, the chocolatey provider, if you say install
Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, install Visual Studio Code from Chocolatey. Force Bootstrap. It actually installs Chocolatey first, and then it uses Chocolatey to install Visual Studio Code. I can do the same thing with Node.js. Install this Node.js module, Force Bootstrap. It installs Node first, then it installs the Node.js module. So if you imagine something like Flask, where I actually want to be able to use multiple.
And now Flask is the Python analog to the Flancy project that we're talking about.
Right. So, or Flancy. I mean, even Flancy's a similar kind of story. The point is, I could say, I've got a Flancy repository that's just got Flancy stuff. So now, but the Flask is interesting because in that realm you've got, I need to install Python. I need to install some Node.js tools that my Python web project uses because that's how Python developers are. And, I need to install Bower packages that are client-side JavaScript stuff for my website. All of those can come through the package manager as in one, meaning I say, install my app, whatever it's called, and it pulls down all these different packages, right? So the dependency management, the ability to say, I need this, and this, and this, and this in order to work. That's the big.
Yeah, so it's really just the model of doing these things. The dependency management is a huge deal.
Yeah, Joel's absolutely right. Should have him up here. But the other thing about the uniform interface, you could go and write a WPF front end, and then all of a sudden you have a graphical way to go get information, get packages from everywhere, as opposed to one versus another versus the other. By the way, I don't think we finished the Flancy talk. Say more about Flancy.
That's awesome. All right. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about where we're headed and where we're at right now. Yeah. So right now, pretty much you can create these web services. It supports getting things out of an HTTP GET, put, post, and delete, and then you just implement the different script blocks for that particular type of functionality. But what some things that are coming down the pipe are
Bless you.
Authentication and using the Nancy View engine to actually render web pages and stuff. We can do some cool stuff around that, where you could actually visualize some of this data in a web browser.
So how does it actually respond to the HTTP request?
Repeat that for on the microphone there.
So how's that actually work? Like, are you writing an IIS plugin, or are you writing an in-process web API?
So Nancy actually supports a bunch of different hosting methods. So
You just used the word Nancy, didn't you?
Yes.
So make sure that people understand that distinction there. Flancy depends on Nancy. Nancy is a what? Fill that out. I don't think we really filled that out.
So Nancy's the .NET kind of, I'd say, micro framework for building these REST services or just web services in general. So the idea behind Nancy is that it's very composable. So that's what I'm saying. It can be hosted in multiple different methods. Flancy uses the self-host, which means it's just pretty much a console app that runs and starts up a HTTP listener.
Is this thing that used to be called Katana?
Are you just making up stuff?
Don't you love these open source names? Did Nancy used to be called Katana? Oh no, that was Earwax.
Katana was Microsoft's rip on Nancy.
Oh, okay. So Nancy's an open source one, community source one. Cool. And then does it work on Core CLI?
That's a really good question. I think it does, honestly. But I would have to check that out. But it does run an IIS, and it can be hosted in Owen, so it doesn't necessarily have to be an IIS either. So there's lots of cool stuff going on there. And pretty much what you do is you just pull in different components, and it only uses what you need. So that's why I say it's composable. Like if you want to use token-based authentication versus basic web authentication, you just pull in those different packages. But Flancy right now only supports, there's a pull request right now for token-based authentication and the self-host. So, moving forward, it'd be cool to see some pull requests from the community around some new functionality for different types of, web servers.
That's on GitHub, right?
Yep, it's on GitHub. The main repository is under Tobias user, which I think is going to be
TOENUFF/Flancy.
Yep.
And we'll put the URL in the, I guess we'll make show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we'll post this after the fact.
The audio is going to be fun.
Yes, hopefully audio will.
Does it have unit tests?
It does not at the moment.
Dude.
But yeah, see, I told Tomei asked me that today about my pull request, and so does it have unit tests? And I'm like, no. What kind of developer do you think I am? So he said he'll do the unit test. So this is just great. Tester, of course.
So as of right now, there's a test folder in the project.
Oh, really? Maybe you did add some tests.
Stephen says there's tests. Have you added tests to the test folder yet, Stephen?
I did not add it.
Oh, maybe Tomei's already getting
So maybe that's getting started. So Tomei started the project, and you recently became a contributor on it. Is that
correct?
right?
Yeah. So I just forked his repo, and I've been putting pull requests in. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's the beauty of GitHub. Anybody can go up and fork a repo and start working on Flancy.
What license are you using?
I don't know if there's a license on there. That's a good point.
Well,
it'll probably be
it has to be open source to be on GitHub.
MIT.
Right.
That's
Is it
our requirement
MIT?
of GitHub, so I don't know what it is. Or at least in the public report.
Yeah. So it's likely going to be MIT or
Sure. Yeah, we just chose
Maybe
it.
we'll just put GPL in there and see how many people use it.
No, it's got an MIT license assigned on it.
Oh, it does.
Is MIT now? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good then.
Thank you, Joel.
Siri told me.
Cool.
So, any other questions from the chat room, from the audience? So the way this works, okay, I will walk over there. The way this works in a live Q&A format podcast is that we have to have questions. Now, Jonathan and myself are quite good at making stuff up and flow well, but we do require your help. That would be nice.
So we have 2 votes on this one. Are there any plans to implement Configuration Manager with Server Core?
So like for a VP or something, maybe?
So
Yeah.
let's see. So configuration management. So the strategy around server configuration management is desired state configuration. And desired state configuration is a heterogeneous, distributed configuration management platform. So heterogeneous. It's going to work on Windows and Linux. A while ago, we made the Linux version of desired state configuration available, GA, so you can do that today. It's distributed, so it'll work on multiple machines, and it's a distributed configuration management platform, so you can layer tools on top of it. So right now, it works on Windows Server, full server, or server with the GUI. I guess we're going to call that server with a desktop experience. Although I will always refer to it as server and a desktop experience, because it makes me sad. Anyway, so server and a desktop, with full GUI, server core, and so far we have not released a desired state configuration on Nano Server, and that will come in the next technical preview. Yes.
I think maybe his question was configuration manager, like System Center, like installing those
System
products.
Center.
Oh, okay, so installing all the products.
Yeah, because they're not coreified. I think you have to install those on.
I have no idea. So we draw a distinction between System Center. When I said I've got ECG is Windows Server, System Center, etc. It's actually System Center Data Center. So there are two System Centers. There's System Center focused in on servers and data centers, and then there's System Center focused in on clients and devices. And SCCM is really kind of focused in on client and devices. I know a number of you use it on servers as well, but going forward, it's going to be more focused in on clients and devices. And then you'll see like OMS, our Operations Management Suite, that is taking up more of the roles and responsibility of handling a more server-oriented model. So just recently, I don't know if you've seen this, OMS's Azure Automation does PowerShell workflows. They extended that to do PowerShell scripts, so now they start really fast, and they give you all the production things you want. Managed assets like managed credentials and common variables across things like that. Source code control for your commands and scripts, as well as like history of what got executed and what were the results. They've also added a desired state configuration management pull server to it, and you'll see that product will grow more and more and be more server oriented. So we were talking about this on the way over. SCCM offers sort of
the funny thing is that I'm not allowed to repeat things in conversations with you because I don't know what I can say.
Exactly.
But anything that Jeffrey says is public.
There you go.
By definition.
Unless it's a table NDA. Okay, no, so what you'll see that it will be more server-oriented change management. So you'll see there's a number of technologies that people use today for servers that aren't particularly well suited to data center scenarios, like group policy. Group policy is not particularly well suited for data center change management, where you want to be able to say, hey, I need these 100 servers all this way like that. And if they're not, I need to know about it right now. I need to know with metaphysical certitude what's going to be on that server, not statistically this may happen. Additionally, when it comes to rolling out changes, whether those changes are changes in a new version of an application or changes because of patches, the model's actually the same, right? What you want to do is you want to understand what the application model is. You'd like to be able to say, pull one component out, make a change, whether it's update an application or do a patch, then test that, and if it's good, bring it back, do it to the next one. If it's not, have some alternative. Those are sort of server-oriented semantics that the client doesn't have and won't get. And they've got a ton of other challenges, incredible scale, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see they will focus more on those challenges, and OMS will focus more on the server-oriented challenges.
Okay, so I guess we're seeing a little bit of a separation of branding going forward. The data center things are going to be more in OMS.
Yeah, I wouldn't say branding as much as sort of mission and such. Just an acknowledgement that there really is a difference between the way you manage a device and the way you manage a server.
Okay, we've got just a few more minutes, and we'll take a few more questions as they come up. I'm sorry, Jonathan, did I interrupt?
Does OMS, you said there's a pull server associated with, is that like a standard pull server, or does it have additional features? Like, does it have some reporting that you can get out of it, or an interface to do reporting?
I'm not entirely sure, but
Okay.
I think they're going to give you some details.
Yes, it has.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about this feature does exist today in Azure, and Azure Automation is the name of that feature, I guess, that's delivered as a part of OMS.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can go and look at that right now.
They're moving pretty quickly. They're one of those agile teams that just like listens to customer codes, releases, does the A/B test. If it doesn't blow up, they let more people use it.
So do you think that will become Microsoft's story for DSC reporting? Because I know before you've said that, or I've heard it said that pull server, the way it is implemented today, is not really an enterprise implementation of a pull server.
Yes.
So, and people mention Puppet or Chef, those types of things. Does OMS, is it going to provide that level of functionality in the future, do you think?
Well, here's the thing I'd say, that, sort of watch that space. I don't want to release the roadmap for those guys, but basically the answer is that, OMS is meant to manage servers and manage them with more of a modern approach to servers, like I just mentioned. So, just as we're very clear, right? Desired state configuration is a platform on which which the community, the entire ecosystem, can build products on top of. System Center and OMS will be products that take advantage of DSC and provide their set of...
That doesn't mean System Center and Configuration Manager.
Correct.
To clarify that.
So I have a question. Is it okay to install PowerShell version 5 now? Is it released? Because with the way Microsoft has released software lately, it's changed, and are people confused by that?
See how far away
Is it okay to install version 5,
Well, if you install Windows 10, you get PowerShell version 5. So there's that. And then there's we've been doing, updates. We've been developing this latest version of PowerShell and the Windows Management Framework in a more agile way, which means we've been releasing it very frequently, getting customer feedback, using that feedback to then drive the next set of things that we go do, etc. We are in the process now of finishing that up and shifting focus from responding to new feature requests to solidifying and increasing the quality of the features that are already there, and then that will then release as, I don't know whether we call it 5 or 5.1, something like that. But
5S?
5.1?
That was a joke.
I
thought it was funny.
and then that will be available down level.
Okay. All right. We have a question.
Hey Jeffrey, can we get an update on the SSH implementation, not just the integration into the PowerShell client from a client perspective, but the server itself?
Good question.
Yeah, so that's proceeding. I think we just had a blog. Steve Lee wrote a blog on that, I think 2 weeks ago, where he talked about how we now have, we've working with a vendor to integrate this stuff. We're using the reintegrating the existing community code with the Windows underlying platform for the crypto APIs. They're doing nightly builds, and there was an invitation for the community to participate. Participate by pulling it down. There's the client and the server. We're pretty early days, right? So don't think, oh, well, great, I'm going to pull this down and use it in production. No, think I can pull this down, kick the tires in my lab, and then give them feedback like, hey, this isn't working, or this is working, or contribute code. Participate.
So is that the Open SSH or the SSH compatible server? Is this shipping in Server 2016? Is this we know that you guys are working on it, but is it shipping as part of that or not?
I don't think we've made that announcement. I mean, the intent is that it will ship in server, and then the question is, kind of time frame and stability.
Okay.
So it'll definitely ship. It'll definitely be available on Windows Server 2. Look, I'll just tell you, here's a challenge we have. Going forward, when all of a sudden we have PowerShell package management, when and why does it make sense to take a particular piece of function and ship it in the OS versus ship it in a repository and be able to pull it down? Right?
When you have that infrastructure, you can it's not as hard of as a question as it used to be. Without the infrastructure, yes, being in the OS is a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it used to be, that was the thing. You know, if it wasn't in the OS, like it's as though it doesn't exist. And then people will say, well, what about the submarine? And the answer is, okay, now think about it. We said you could set up your own repository. You know, and you set up a repository and you pull things down from one repository and you put it in another. So the answer is, yeah, no, it doesn't really matter whether it's, you know, the one up in the cloud or you set up a mirror in your submarine. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the OS. And so ultimately what we're doing is kind of conceptually trying to look for those principles as to when and why it makes sense to ship one place versus the other. And so that'll be an ongoing conversation. But it's certainly no longer boy, if it doesn't ship in the OS, you know, nobody's going to pay attention to it. Those days, I think, are well behind us.
That's a good point. Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. Oh, one last question, then we're going to close. Maybe two. We'll see.
Hi, Jeffrey. If a customer migrates an application from a full-blown GUI to a nano server, are you guys planning on releasing something like application check? This one will run on nano. If not, what are the causes? What are the remediations, etc. Both for IT pros and developers.
Yeah. So you can take that application. And if you bring up the source code in Visual Studio, basically Visual Studio, you target, I want to support traditional server application, get access to all the APIs, or I want to target a nano server environment. And when you target a nano server environment, if you're using an API that doesn't exist in nano server, you'll get the squiggle lines that say, don't do that. And then you clean all that up. When you do the build, then you get the exe, and then you can deploy it to nano server running on a physical node, in a virtual machine, or in a container. So yeah, this is one of the big differences between nano server and server core. Server core, we never did what we should have done, which is have an SDK that showed you don't use these APIs because they're not going to work. It's like, yeah, you know, try it. And when it doesn't work, then don't do that again. So
open a support case. All right, one last question. Keith, wrap it up here.
So with Windows 10, we got some fairly modest but nice enhancements to conhost.exe, and we included PS Readline in the box, which is great. Can we expect further enhancements to conhost to help, you know, the shell experience on Windows be more competitive with like shell on Linux and Mac OS?
Yeah, so this is the con host, the console host, is done by the Windows client team, and so in general, I try not to speak for them. I will say that
get them on the
I will
podcast.
you should, you absolutely should. I will just point out that for the first time in like 15, 16 years, they actually made a change. And so everyone's very excited about that as both, one, it was a good change, but then two, is a harbinger of things to come and an intent to make things better. And again, I'll let them speak for themselves as to where that's going to go. But the intent is that you know, it's a great platform that you want to spend all your time doing stuff. There's a recognition that, you know, so much of development today is done through the command line. Because when you really think down, you know, I think what people are finally kind of getting is that GUIs are antisocial. They are. They're antisocial. Like literally, right? So I watch you and I say, wow, you just accomplished something amazing, you know, with that GUI. Can I have that? The answer's no. Like, well, but I want it. No. Like, but it'd be so helpful if I
Here's a
could have
10-page
it.
run book where I've described the mouse clicks that I've
Well, yeah, no, that's it. That's those big 100-page deployment guides. That's how you share a GUI, right? And you open it up and like, you know, here's a screen capture and it's thing like click here, and then type this, and then turn the page. Click here. Except if you're like me and you have ADD, you're like missing pages. This is terrible, horrible, funny-ish story. Like, so, you know, where like. Forever ago, like 20 plus years ago, I decided, well, I'll make my fiance a dinner. You know, I'll cook dinner. And so I got ADD if you haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, so I'm cooking this Chinese meal, and as I'm doing it, and I went and did something, the page flipped over. I didn't notice that. So I'm like, what the hell? And so then, anyway, so I made like a combination of 2 meals. It was like the worst thing ever. And a week doesn't go by that I don't hear that story. Okay? So what I'm saying is, when you got this 100-page deployment guide that you got to like, page, click, you're like, the odds of success are pretty darn low, right? So GUIs are antisocial. But it's so hilarious. Sometimes you'll see these really thick deployment guides, and then you'll say, or if you're using PowerShell, here's 3 inches of PowerShell, like linear inches of PowerShell. Just cut and paste this. Change this to put your server name here and just run this. And it's so it shares. You can create a community around it. Anyway, the point is, like, folks are figuring that out, right? Before there was just this maniacal GUI. I don't know what your question was, but it's about the GUI, my friend. And we're being a little smarter. The new guy is pretty awesome. He's like, hey, go listen to your customers. Stop telling your customers what they should do. Listen to your customers. And when you listen to your customers, oddly enough, they say, yeah, I love GUIs. I love GUIs. GUIs are great. But I also want to be able to share. I want to be able to communicate. I want to be able to do things to the command line. And your console sucks. Could you please spend a little time investing in it? And so they are.
All right. So
do we have time? Can you tell the class story? Is that a story you can tell?
Oh, okay, sure. So,
hey guys, do we have time for another story?
So the question came up about classes, right? Now, why are we doing classes? Oh, here's the story. So there's this thing called CPS, Cloud Platform Solution. So this is Microsoft's sort of private cloud in a box. Think of, you go to a web page and you say, I want private cloud, and it says, oh, here's a combo box. Pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 racks. Oh, I want 4 racks, say buy. And you get this integrated hardware-software solution. Now, the great thing about that is it's entirely, indeed, comes out of the box, just works. The whole thing was entirely provisioned using PowerShell scripts. Hey, that's great. So then you might say, well, PowerShell scripts, okay, that's good, but why not desired state configuration? And the answer was, because we did this before desired state configuration. Desired state configuration was just getting off the ground and really was not in a situation to use that. And so when we were doing we just recently announced CPS, Standard. And the first one, the 1 to 4 racks, was CPS Premium. CPS Standard starts off and it's just like 4 machines and then can grow from there. And so we said was, okay, great, so as we go do this, now we'll want to convert that from just pure PowerShell to a desired state configuration. And so I was talking to the development manager there and he said, yeah, no. I said, what do you mean no? He says, yeah, no, I don't want to use PowerShell. I said, okay, why's that? He says, well, my developers hate PowerShell. I said, really? He says, yeah, they hate it. I said, okay, well, let's talk to them. Instead of hurt a little bit, but that you lean in. And so I'd like to talk to them to find out why they hate it and see if there's something we can do about it. And so I talked to the developers, and you know what? They had really good reasons. They said, look, I'm a developer. This ISE is great, but I'm a developer, and developers use Visual Studio. So the fact that it's not a Visual Studio, it's a problem. Like in Visual Studio, I've integrated source code control, and I don't have an integrated source control in ISE. Hint, hint, hint. Anyway, so I got to use Visual Studio. Next is, I'm a developer, right? So I'm used to defining things in terms of classes and interfaces as contracts between the various parts of my team. And I can't really do that with PowerShell. I mean, you say this, but really, you can't really do that in PowerShell. And then I'm a developer, and this thing about dynamic scoping, what the heck's that? And then I had this return statement, but then I called some .NET method and it returned an object, and that got returned too. What's up with that? They're oh yeah. And then they said, what was it? It's oh, I'm a developer and I'm responsible. I'm going to get judged based upon whether this stuff works or not. And there's no ability to test my code. There's no unit test framework. And I said, yeah. And then completely separate, a couple months later, the development director, I'm walking into work one day, this guy almost punched me in the face. He's like, you screwed up my schedule. I said, I'm pretty sure I didn't screw up your schedule. Why do you think I screwed up your schedule? He said, no, you screwed up my schedule. One of my developers checked in a PowerShell script that had a bug in it. And we didn't find that until we ran this test, a while later, and then we had to go back and redo all this work and, a bunch of rework, and you screwed up my schedule. Why can't they, when I have a developer and he checks in his C# code, there are these tests that we run, and they don't pass the test, they don't check in the code. Why don't you have that for PowerShell? And so all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, that's a good point. And so we added PowerShell support in ISE. We added classes with a Visual Studio. We added classes and a new language mode where you have to have stronger types. There's no dynamic scoping. It's pure lexical scoping. If you have a return statement, that's the only thing that gets returned. If you do a write output, we say, yep, that's going right to the dustbin. We adopted Pester, a unit test framework, and we worked on PowerShell Script Analyzer. So now these developers can work in an environment where they are comfortable. They are practicing their art with a new language. See, the point is, it wasn't so much the language. Look, developers are polyglots. They pick up languages all the time, right? But it was the environment and the contracts that basically they are going to get judged on, right? They were going to get judged. Hey, at the end of the year, you get money, you don't, right? That sort of thing. And they wanted to get the money. So they needed a set of support tools that made them, produce production quality artifacts that they could succeed both with the project and with their career. And so we invested in those things, and I would say that the latest version of PowerShell, the latest version of CPS Standard, is a desired state configuration module. I think they made it I forget the numbers, but it was a lot faster, like 6 to 10 times faster, because we were able to use the parallel features. By the way, that was another thing, is we kind of wanted to jam that on that team, say sort of one way or the other, we're going to use desired state configuration, because I really need to know, are we building the right thing? And as they executed it, they said, hey, you've got these reliability problems. Hey, I need to be able to do this in parallel. Hey, I need to be able to do synchronization across machines. Hey, these artifacts need to run in this user context, and without that, I can't install properly. So the fact that they were able to do that provided us great real-world feedback, and it's one of the reasons why desired state configuration is in the shape that it's in now, because we had great feedback, great real-world scenarios driving it. So in other words, this isn't just a bunch of engineers saying, wouldn't this be great? Well, we got those too, but then we go and say, okay, put that on the list, and then, hey, how are you doing with that CPS install? Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, okay, well, let's put that a little bit ahead of those other things. So that's the story behind why you see the shift. PowerShell's always tried to be the tool that integrates the communities. Nowadays, we have a word for that. We call it DevOps. You go back to the Monad Manifesto, it's exactly what I was talking about there. We want to have a single tool that unifies the developers and the operators, so that the operators can help the developers can help the operators, and you have a single set of artifacts that anybody can look at and produce and understand. And the reality is that we were far more focused in on operators, and now you see us fully embracing the developers as well. So you'll see some more of that going forward, but I think we did a pretty great job in this release.
I think you did a pretty good job.
Okay.
So with that, I think we're going to close. I want to thank everybody here in person for coming and checking out what we had to talk about with Tobias Weltner, Tobias Weltner, Adam Driscoll, and representing Tomei's project that he's collaborating with. Thank you to Adam. And Jeffrey, thanks for spending time with us this evening. It's really an honor. So with that, I guess we're done. Don't forget to check out the PowerScripting podcast, where Jonathan and I have conversations like this with other people as well. Repeatedly.
That's